Okay, so we're good to go. All right, so good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And before I go further on the agenda, I would just like to acknowledge that we have two guests in our audience that I wasn't anticipating. One of them would be the Abbotsford Teacher Union President this evening, Doug Smullen. Welcome, Doug. I'd also like to acknowledge my former grade 12 English teacher. And later I became a trustee and he worked for the board. So we've come a long ways, haven't we? We have Dr. Steve Carlton. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So I'll begin formally with the acknowledgement that the school district of Abbotsford is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Sumac First Nation and Mathqui First Nations. With this, we respect the long-standing relationships that the Indigenous nations have to this land, as they are the original caretakers. Before we rise for the singing of O Canada, I would like to, you see two empty seats. See, Trustee Rauch and Trustee Neufeld are not here at the moment, but they actually are because they are on the telephone. So I won't be able to say hi. There we go. Okay, so they will, time to time, I won't be able to see a hand and they'll speak up and we'll go from there. But now I ask you to sing really loud to drown out our voices. I love that version so much. Thank you, everyone. So next on our agenda, we have some business to take care of before we move into the formal presentations. Part of that is the adoption of the agenda as presented. Trustee Rai, Trustee Kandarajwan. Thank you. We vote electronically. We don't do a show of hands, so you'll see in a moment whether we all agree or not. And there you go. Fantastic. Approval of the minutes, please. Peterson, Trustee Peterson, aye. Trustee Rai. Okay. Catch you next time. Okay. Voting buttons. They are voting remotely. This is a web-based platform. That's why they are able to vote. We're not voting for them. So, you know. So I have Trustee Neufeld moving consent items. Second. Trustee By. You're welcome. Trustee Kandarajwan. So voting buttons again. Okay. Now we are moving over to school presentations. We did consent items. Okay. So this is the part where I turn it over to the superintendent for a welcome to our presenters and an introduction.
Thank you very much, Chair Wilson. Yeah, very excited to have two schools here with us this evening. I'm going to ask Principal Melanie Trudeau to come forward first. I know she has a bit of a team with her. So she's here obviously representing École Centennial Park Elementary School. And we're going to hear a little bit this evening about the benefits of the Cove. So I'll have you come up and introduce your team.
Madame Trudeau, if you could just turn on the microphone before you speak. Fabulous, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We're happy to present our sensory room, The Cove, to you tonight. And with me, I have my co-creator of our sensory room, teacher Gerline Grewal. And I've got an education assistant, Jenna Merrill, who is in there frequently. And we've got Leah Lewis, grade 5 student, and my friend Benji. Come on in, Benji. So, the Cove is a place for growth and regulation. We're going to share a video. Oh, there you go. Here's the, this is the Cove.
So the Cove is a space we designed that students can use to regulate their emotions, manage their sensory needs, and so they can return to the classroom ready to learn.
So when a student is not regulated and they have difficulty focusing on tasks, they may have emotional outbursts or meltdowns due to sensory overload and can struggle with transitions. Dysregulated students may miss learning opportunities, so the Cove helps with emotional regulation, sensory exploration, and building co-regulation, so between an adult and a student, and then building on self-regulation skills for the student.
First is big body movement. Then we have medium minds, and we end off with slow senses.
The first thing we do when we get to the Cove is we have the students do a check-in. They start, the idea of the Cove is that it's designed so they can be self-directed with some mental support. So this is one thing that we do when we go inside. It's to assess the current internal state of the student. They tell us how their weather is feeling inside. And Benji, would you mind demonstrating how your weather is feeling inside right now? Sunny, just right. If you were feeling maybe a little frustrated about something that happened at school, what would your body feel like then? Maybe a little cloudy, right? And so the goal is we do that assessment at the beginning and at the end. After that, we demonstrate how, or Leah will demonstrate how to select the activities which are going to be chosen. So the next step is choosing which 3 activities they're going to engage in. Can you walk us through that, Leah?
So first you will grab the big body movement, then you'll grab the medium minds that you want, and then you'll choose the slow senses, and then you'll give it to the person and go do it.
So the adult that you're with. So we want students to do one activity in each area.
And
And
it's
we'll-
color-coded,
Yeah,
so they can see easily what counts. Okay, so the first stop in the Cove is big body movement. The idea with big body movement is help students to bring their nervous systems into balance. There are targeted activities that help connect their bodies to their brains. So Benji, up there we've got some options that we have for big body movement, like the treadmill, the stationary bike, medicine ball. We've got boxing. Which one's your favorite activity to do when you're in the den? Is it the plasma car?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you also like the treadmill, right?
Yeah.
That's very cool. Benji and I are gonna demonstrate with the medicine ball today some of the things that you can do in the Cove. So this is a weighted ball. It's got some sand inside. Okay, Benji, what can you do? Good. All right. Is there something else you can do?
Yeah.
You can take it up high and drop it all the way down. Oh, Good job, Benji. Okay, so the big body movement helps the students prepare for the next activity and be successful in the Cove.
So the next part is Media Minds, and this component uses rhythm and breathing exercises to help students transition from the big body to more of a focused state. It helps calm their breathing, center their minds, and prepares them for the final stage, which is the sensory play. So, Leah, what different options do we have for Media Minds?
Balance board, music, like a calming app on the iPad, yoga, touch lights, and stepping stones.
Yeah, so, can you demonstrate our stretching and maybe one of the stretches that you like to do?
Do you guys want to do the stretching with us?
There you go.
Do you want me to read it while you do it?
Get 911 up.
Benji will help.
All right, so place your heel on the side of your leg, place your palms together in front of your chest, and hold for 10 seconds.
Oh, I don't know. 10 seconds.
4, 3,
We can
2,
be totally Teresa.
1.
And then you would switch sides and do it on the other side as well. Yeah, you don't have to.
Okay. The last stop in the Cove is our slow senses, which is sensory play that helps us transfer from the physical and rhythmic activities before to a kind of a more calming experience. Benji, can you tell me some of the options that you see up there that are slow senses?
Yeah.
What do you see? Do you want to tell Miss M?
Yeah.
Tell me. Oh, the tent, which we have a nice outer space experience where there's lights projected all over the tent and you get a nice cozy space. We have a Lego wall.
Yeah.
There's a wall with different sensory fabrics that people can, have some tactile experiences with, beading. And what is one of your favorite activities in the slow senses? The sensory buckets. So this is an example of one of the sensory bins that we have. It's all colored rice. There's other things like scented Play-Doh and Orbeez. Can you show how we would play with the scented rice or the colored rice? Good. You could pick some up and drop it down. Good. So the goal of the slow senses is to help regulate the whole self and to provide a gentle conclusion to the circuit.
All right, so how does it work? Leah, who can use the Cove?
Anybody?
Anyone. We try to focus on those who require the sensory or emotional support. And when can you use it, Leah?
Whenever you feel like you need a time to go regulate your body.
And who has to go in there with you?
Adult,
What kind of adult?
like Miss Kmetz, Mount Trudeau, or EA.
And how long are you usually in the Cove for?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Okay. So you're gonna go first?
Oh, Leah, how does the Cove help you?
Helps me calm down and get ready to go back to the class
So why do you need help calming down sometimes?
because I build up my anger.
You feel frustrated, right? And
Benji, how does being in the Cove help you?
Being calmed down.
Being calmed down. And how can we tell after we're in the Cove when we are calmed down? We have a
Smile.
smile and
Happy heart.
a happy heart,
Calm hand.
calm hands, and you are
Ready to learn.
ready to learn. Great job.
so great ideas come from a clear mind. As a thank you for being part of our journey today, we're giving you a stress ball for your new go-to for those moments when you need to pause, reset, and find your balance. Squeeze away.
Squeeze away.
That's very awesome. Thank you. Leah, thank you.
What a good night to have them.
All right, so we would like Benji, when he's done, and Leah to stand at the front. And then I will do a gentle walkthrough of what might happen next. We'll just wait for Benji to come back.
Which one are you going to choose? Oh, I'm taking the pink one.
Okay, Benji, come over here.
Okay, so Benji and Leah, thank you for joining us this evening. I know we look like a big bunch of adults, but we're actually really nice. And sometimes, trustees, sometimes we want to ask you some questions. And if it's too hard, don't worry about it. But sometimes we just tell you what a great job you're doing. So I will open the table. Trustee Peterson.
Well, I like the ending statement. I think it was Benji said that when you left, you had to have a smile, a happy heart, and I didn't get the third one. What was the third one?
Calm hands.
I'm s-
Calm hands.
Calm. Oh, yes. So it's amazing. It's amazing that lots of us could learn from this, and adults for sure. That having a smile, a happy heart, and calm hands is very good for all of us. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Peterson. Do I have any other, Trustee Rye?
Thank you very much. How many children use this daily or on a week's basis?
I think it's constantly being used. There's some regular students who go in pretty much difficulty transition time, so like after recess to get them ready for school environment. So there's some children that use it daily. I'd say each day there's at least 10. Yeah.
Oh,
That go
probably
through.
more.
Probably
I think
more.
like we're at 15 now,
Oh,
I
there we
think.
go.
We started with our designated students, and giving them specific times.
Yeah.
And now that we've gotten all our designated students in, we've opened it up to other kids that will need breaks. And they're slowly trickling in, and Jenna spends her afternoons in the Cove rotating, bringing students into the Cove, and yeah, I'd say we're probably at 15 on a daily basis.
Just from my class, I have 3 students who regularly use it every morning, so.
What a great idea. Thank you. Thank you for whoever did it. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Kendra Rajwan?
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Love it. Great concept. Two questions. One for the staff is, how long did it take you to build the Cove? And for the students, when you do go, when is it your favorite time to go to the Cove?
Start with you guys.
When do you like to go?
When
or
do you go?
What's your favorite time to go?
Probably like around after lunch recess.
Do you have a favorite time to go to the Cove?
Yeah.
When is your favorite time?
To pick someone.
Oh, sometimes he likes to go with a friend just before lunchtime.
In the
right?
mornings, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, Benji's a morning user,
Yeah,
eh?
morning guy, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And we joke, because we say it took us 12 minutes to come up with the concept of the room. We visited another school that had a sensory room, and just on our drive home, we were like, oh, we can do this, we can do this.
Yeah.
And it took us probably 2 weeks to to have the materials come in and then put it all together, and it was really a nice team effort. All our staff helped contribute to the room. Lots of them stayed after school with us to help set up.
Thank you. Does anybody, either Trustee Neufeld or Trustee Roque?
Yeah, I think it'd be great for us to set up a room like that for trustees.
No.
But, great concept, thank you very much.
We'll give you a stress ball when you get back.
Yeah. He'll need it.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to say thanks to the kids for presenting. Really nice to present.
Hey, thank you. So for me, I know there was, the quip about maybe having one for the trustees, but I'm thinking I might redesign my home for some of the things that are in that room. I was like, oh, those look really awesome. So thank you. Benji and Leah, thank you so much for presenting this evening. And I don't have any questions, but I do have a thank you, and I'm going to come bring it to you. I'm sorry, this is not for the staff and the hard work they do. You get a note of appreciation. Thank you. But this really is for the students. I'm your trustee liaison, which means you can invite me to the room.
Oh, yeah, no, anybody can come visit. You should all come visit.
Hi. Can you shake my hand? Or you? Oh, thank you so much. This is for you. Okay, can I shake your hand? Thank you, and this is for you. Now, this lady here, she'd like to take our picture. Can we all get in the picture together? You guys can stay in the picture too. And we'll just, okay, right here, Benji, just right here, buddy. There we go. I'll just stand your arm around Madame Trudeau. So, thank you very much again. Enjoy that, okay? And we appreciate the stress balls, they are necessary.
Let's say thank you, yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Superintendent Nozak, back over to you.
Yeah, one more time, thank you, Ecole Centennial Park. Love to learn about the Cove. Also very excited to have from Abbotsford Traditional School, Principal Jasbir Singh is here this evening, and he's got a team with him. So I'm going to ask you to come up, if you don't mind, Principal Singh, and introduce your team. And trustees, tonight we're going to learn a little bit about some of the work they're doing around promoting literacy, and I think we're even going to hear about things like morpheme magic, for example. So over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Great to be here. I'm not going to say much because I have a great team here of teachers and students and our VPs. I'll introduce our two VPs who are going to do the presentation, and then they'll take it over. So first I'd like to, Becky Taves takes care of the secondary side, and Miss Ashley Munir takes care of the middle, and they're going to coordinate the entire presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please excuse me if I need to cough partway through. I've got some lozenges on me. But when we were talking as a team about what we wanted to come here and present, we had a number of different ideas, but one that we settled on because that we're quite excited about is the work that our staff team are doing to promote and improve literacy in our buildings, specifically in our middle years, in our 6, 7, and 8 classes and departments, but also with a view to move forward. So I am going to invite two people up to join me right now. That would be Brenda Mallory and Jeff Dunton. So come on up. So Brenda is our Library Learning Commons teacher, but she's also our English Language Arts department lead. And Jeff Dunton is one of our grade 8 teachers and one of our ELA teachers. So we're going to present our information kind of through an interview style process here. So we'll start with Brenda as our ELL department head, but also some, sorry, ELA, I'm sorry. And also our Library Learnings Common teacher. If you haven't seen some of the things that Brenda has done in our Learning Commons, you should really stop by because I think we have a really progressive and cutting edge Learning Commons in our building. But Brenda, can you tell us what some of the literacy goals that you and the department have this year?
Yes. So kind of twofold. So our K-12 Library Learning Commons inquiry this year for the coming 3 to 5 years that we have is to build a culture of reading. So building on that, we have brought that into our ELA department along with kind of looking at implementing an independent reading framework. So a set of routines that we have, and what can that independent reading accomplish for improved reading comprehension, building reading stamina, the ability to sit and read for 15 minutes, for example. So those were, our goals for the year.
Excellent. And then those goals were created partly because you saw some gaps. So can you tell us what some of the gaps or issues that you were noticing that inspired these goals?
The inability to sit and read for 15 minutes or any real length of time for most of our students. It just, a lot of them aren't reading at home anymore. Declining reading comprehension levels, which is not just our school, I'm sure you all know, district-wide, province-wide. It's obviously an issue. And just not engaging with reading materials as much anymore. So,
thank you. And then can you tell us what some of the strategies are that you as a team have that are trying to focus on these goals? And then how widespread are they within the school? Yeah.
That's the wrong lesson.
This is Jeff, your pencil's in there.
pencil's
This
in
is
the
Jeff's
wrong
copy. So I read this book last year on a Pro-D, and really, it just really stuck with me. It's called Just Read It, Unlocking the Magic of Independent Reading in Middle and High School Classrooms by Jared Amato. And I actually mentioned it to my LLC team, and all LLCs got a copy, and then the curriculum department was very kind and provided our whole department with a copy, and we've been doing a book study. Sarah Strassel, our helping teacher, has been working with us. So our whole ELA middle department has been working with this program and using these strategies. So it's, like I said, every English block, you've got 15, 10 on a given day, maybe 20 on a given day, minutes of reading, followed by, he calls them RAP. So it's writing, reflecting, analyzing, and participating. So there's all these little activities you can do afterwards, some formal, some informal, marked, not marked, whatever the case may be, to build on whatever skills you're focusing on at that time. As you can see, it's really well loved. Jeff will talk about a little bit more of that. So we've been implementing it this year with grades 6 to 8. It's every ELA teacher's got the time set aside in their schedule now. We're all doing that. Every teacher is doing at some point some of the strategies. Some of them have been doing it all year and are doing a lot of them. Some are just kind of getting into some strategies and maybe doing once a week, something like that. And then the hope is next year to build on that with the 9 to 12, so that the grade 8s will come in to the grade 9 classrooms having had this experience and this skill set. Yeah,
Thank you.
building from that.
Appreciate that. And then to move on to Jeff here, as I said, our grade 8 teacher who, one of our grade 8 teachers who is teaching ELA. Why am I having a hard
Still
time? Because I'm
English.
secondary.
It's
I'm
just
secondary.
English.
It's English. It's just teaching English. But more specific, more classroom-based questions for you. So what are some of the resources and strategies that you are using in the classroom to meet the goals of the department?
Well, Becky, thank you for asking.
Such an unexpected question.
Brenda is fantastic. Brenda brought this in, and so Brenda introduced it to me, and then the district's kind enough to buy us all the books. I find the morning is best. First block that the kids are with me, so it's middle school, so we flip. So I've got my kids' first block. They read for 15 minutes, which is just on the edge of what the less inclined readers can do, and just not quite enough for the ones who are really strong. So it's that little sweet spot. They read for 15 minutes. They know the routine. And then Brenda put together a wonderful digital choice board. So sometimes I give the kids a choice, and they can read off or pick something off the board, and they do something that would be sort of finding a root word, and then we add suffixes or prefixes to it. Sorry, I did it backwards. And then we post those out for kids. I always say, because the grade 6 kids will walk by and they'll learn new words. Words we want them to learn, not those other words. Right? And so they have that choice, or I'll guide them through something. We do, might be an article that we want to read. And so they've done something after they've done the reading. So they can't quite fake read. And it's all their own books, so we go down every Wednesday. I'm just going to jump all over if it's okay.
Do it.
They go every
Absolutely.
Wednesday, they go down to the library, and they pick a book that they're going to read just in class, 15 minutes in class. We have some, depending on the range, we have a whole range. And if they're picking smaller books, it's only up to 4, because it has to last you a week. And then they know there's going to be some sort of accountability after they read for 15 minutes, that they're going to have to do something with it, so they can't not read. And then we roll that into things like, am I allowed to do Morpheme Magic now?
You are
And
allowed
then
to say whatever you
roll that
want.
into
Run away.
Morpheme Magic, which is another thing that the district, I've been doing this at the English enthusiasts meeting with Sarah and Tyra, who are fantastic. Again, I've been just doing what other people have been giving me, and they're just taking it. And that does a lot of
What the other people are here for.
They do a lot of base stuff. So it's right now we're doing suffixes and how words work with Anglo-Saxon words and Latin words, and building a vocabulary that I think, in my mind, I thought this is sort of a grade 6 level, and then I realized this is something the kids need. They didn't get this. I think they've missed something along the way, whether it's COVID, whether it's their phones, I don't know. But so Morphe Magic's been fantastic as well to meet the needs of my kids when it comes to just learning words and vocabulary and expanding that. And then, do I do my next one?
Yes.
All right, and then,
You don't even need me. I
all
can
right.
sit down.
And then I do book club. So I guess I was going to say I'm the old dog that's learning new tricks, but it's not new tricks. It's a lot of stuff I'm just adding to what I've always done. So I think your kids would recognize the stuff that I'm doing now. They would just say, I've just added more technology to it, and I've added a little bit more pizzazz to it. But a lot of it's what I've been doing for 20-something years. But I take this then for the kids who are really strong. And this stop notes and notes, I tie that into book club. And so every Thursday we meet for book club, and the kids have to generate their own questions based on the book that 5 or 6 of them are all reading together. So I'll have 4 or 5 groups going. And then they've read a quarter of the book. They come in and they have questions that they've generated, 2 fat questions I call them, and a connection. And then within that too, the ones who are really strong, they'll do something that maybe is out of this, such as an again and again. So authors will often say something again and again in a book. It'll recur over and over and over. And that's telling you to cue into that because something's either telling you what the conflict is, what the rise of the plot is, trying to understand the story, or it might be, hey, there's something coming up that this matters for, so pay attention. And so my stronger readers can do that as well. And so I've got a range of kids who are reading from graphic novels. They read a smaller group books that are easier for them to get through, to the kids who are reading big, thick, my ones here are reading big, thick books. And they're able to show their knowledge in different ways. So we have a whole range of things that meet all, I think, differentiated for all the students.
May I? Just to build on, so the book with book club, they're given 10 to 12 books to choose from. So there's an element of choice in there from a set, list of pre-chosen books by us. And then the big thing with Just Read It is that choice, that of their own. Like this is independent reading of a book of their choosing. This is not the time they're reading their novel study. And there's a place for that, and there's, those things go together. But choice in reading material is like so important to engage, to make them not fake read, as Jeff calls it. And that comes in with both of those.
Once
Yeah.
you've read it, having the opportunity to talk about what you've read is a
Yeah.
big thing.
Yeah.
So I often get the kids to do a lot of that.
And yeah, that's the other thing we didn't talk about, and it was one of the goals, but again, comes with the Just Read It, but it's that building that community as well. His pod is hilarious because we have, I don't know if you guys know the Who Was books. Should have brought some. Oh, there you go. Look at that.
Big head.
He goes in the Big Head books. These are biographies, and they are amazing. They're just tiny little biographies, caricatures on the front, so he calls them the Big Head books. And we have geography ones that are where was, and history ones that are what was and what is. And they're so popular in his pod, but they'll pass it around. I joke about the RBG, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg book that made the rounds with all these grade 8 boys that just shared it all around. But it does, it builds that community. You're talking about reading the same books. Book club does the same thing. You're meeting in a group that's reading the same book, but then also next month, a different group is also reading that book, and you can talk about that. And so the building that culture of readers but building the community comes really well with all of this as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So that was the why and the how, but the proof is always in the pudding. So the next section, Ashley is going to be asking some of our grade 8 students questions about their reading.
Okay, so we have some grade 8 students here from Jeff's pod. And so we have Julianne and Joven and Akam. So I'm going to ask them some questions about how they've interacted with these literacy strategies over the course of the year so far. Okay. So what are some things you do in class to work on your reading skills, Akam?
Read 15 minutes every day.
And Julianne, what's something you've been working on in class?
We usually do activities from the choice board to improve our reading skills.
And how do you feel about this reading time in class? What is it like for you? What's the experience for you?
I like the 15 minutes of reading time in class because it gives me a chance to enjoy the book I've chosen. The experience is relaxing and I always look forward to it as a way to unwind and get lost in a good story.
I feel like it's a great way to start off the day all relaxed and not
How about you, Akam?
It's gotta read more than I used to. I'm interested in the books I choose and not bored.
Okay. And what activities do you find are the most engaging and helpful from your reading activities on the choice board? Joven, what's your favorite?
I enjoy painting the picture the most because when you're reading and you see what the author is giving you, like the details and little hints, you can like imagine that in your own brain, and I like just seeing what the author's seeing.
Okay. And what's your favorite?
I like the character analysis because it allows me to dive deeper into the characters. It allows me to see what they're made of, like how they develop through the story, and that makes me understand the book more.
How about you, Akam?
I choose like word of the day. In my books, we pick a word that is challenging, then we find a synonym and an antonym and make a sentence with it.
What do you enjoy about book club? When you have, so there are two different things. You have your 15 minutes of reading of your choice book, but you also have book club where you're with your group. So what did you enjoy best about book club, and how did you find it helpful?
I like the books I choose. Right now I'm reading Crossover. It is about people that play basketball. The discussions help me understand what the book is about.
Okay, and Juliet.
I enjoy hearing everyone's different perspectives in book club, and it's interesting to see how we all view the book in our own ways. I also found that sharing connections and questions was helpful, as it allowed me to understand the book better and gain insight on what my peers were thinking.
And what did you, sorry, Joven, how's your opinion on reading changed since this?
I like reading a lot more because I found a certain genre that I really like, only because of book club.
What was the genre that you really liked?
Romance, mystery, and some thriller.
Okay. And tell us about the kind of books that you like to choose in reading time and book club, and what influences your choices. So what's your favorite one that you get to choose?
Who Was ones?
The Who Was ones? Which one was your favorite one that you read?
The Stephen Hawking one.
Okay. And what did you like about it?
Like it was like good.
It was good? Okay. What about you, Joven?
I like lots of mystery because then it keeps me thinking the entire book, and it makes me want to read more, which is what I like.
Okay.
I like fantasy and dystopian books because their plot twists and their lines are like really interesting, and they keep me intrigued.
Thank you so much for sharing about. It's okay. Thank you so much for sharing, you guys.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. You stay right there. Same process as last time. Your questions might be a little more difficult, or not. Just kidding. Okay, Trustee White.
Yeah, this is great. We know how foundational reading is to learning. I'm just curious for each of you who are involved in this, has your love for reading increased because of these initiatives?
Yes, it did.
Do you guys read more like on your own because of this?
Yes, I do.
Amazing. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. So well done, students, and well done, teachers.
Okay. All right. Trustee Rai.
Thank you. Question to you. My question, you already asked the question, which was your favorite book? So anything other than those, any other favorite books or that you liked? And how did you find the process from when you first joined till now? Like, is it very enjoyable or extremely enjoyable?
Extremely.
All right. But any other book you would like to?
I like the School for Good and Evil series. That was a really good one.
Okay.
I love the Inheritance Game series.
And Ekam?
The Diary of the Wimpy Kid.
My favorite nowadays are the Jack Reacher series, I'm sure. They're mysteries. You like them? I'm reading them. Book number 11, I think. Somewhere there.
Okay,
Thank you.
Trustee Kendiraj.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. I have a question for the staff. I looked up your book, Just Read It. It's got some good reviews. So I'm just curious, because you have a lot of sticky notes, so I had to look it up. So you've got my attention. So what's one takeaway from that book that you realize that this is going to be a success for you in your classroom?
Well, I think what it did is it gave me the ability to say, these kids are all reading right now, and that's okay. It justified my giving them 15 minutes and I'll often look out, and I have to read with them, and then, so I just got to finish The Hobbit, and I'll look out while they're reading and I'm reading together. I put up a timer and everything so we know the countdown, and I can see them all reading, and in the past, I might have been a little hesitant on that, going, but they're not doing anything. But going through this reading is what they're doing, and that's extremely important. Then I also like the idea of the art part that we do, taking words that they didn't know or that are interesting, and trying to figure out in the book what the meaning of the word is. And then we post those outside in the hallway and around the classroom. And then, in theory, I'm increasing the kids' vocabulary if they're looking at the words that are out there.
So I just have an extension to that question. Thank you. So do you find, since using the materials from Just Read It has changed their perspective in the classroom, whether it be their attitude or just the way they teach, like their work ethic, like what's different, what's changed?
Today I found that out. I suspected when Akam's talking like that, right?
He literally was sitting here going, I think I'm gonna cry. I think I
That's
might
what I said, I
actually
think I'm
cry
gonna
while the three of
Yeah.
them were talking.
Very proud. They're getting what it is I want them to get. So you never get, until you stand up here and you hear the kids talk about it, you don't really know, right? Is this working? Is this helping? The fact that they're reading is, maybe tear up a little bit there. So I didn't know until now that it actually was having an effect.
We did do, all 6 to 8, we did a digital reading attitude survey at the beginning when we started this, and it was, how many books did you read last year? I like reading, 1 to 5. Reading is boring, 1 to 5. Reading's important, all of those kinds of things. So we have that as a starting point. We'll do one at the end of the year, and then again at the beginning of the year. So we're really looking forward to seeing the attitudes change.
Trustee Peterson, and then I will go to the phone.
Thank you. Building a culture of reading. You must have been reading our strategic plan. It's nice to know that, we know that literacy improvement is a big part of what the board sees as success for students. And so I congratulate the staff for what you're doing with it. I love to hear the enthusiasm that kids have for reading, and I just say well done to all.
Thank you. Trustee Rauch, Trustee Neufeld.
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you to the leadership in the school for this initiation and taking the lead on this. And I hope the students will have a lifetime of enjoyable reading ahead with the skills that they're learning. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Neufeld. Trustee Rauch, do you have anything?
Yeah, thank you very much. You all know that this board is very, very supportive of literacy, so I just wanted to say great job as well to the staff at the school and the kids for participating. We always say you teach children how to read, and then after they know how to read, they read so that they can teach themselves, and that's the journey to a lifelong time of success. So great job, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Two things from me. They're not so much questions. One is to just ATMS side of things. My daughter wasn't a reading lover. You may remember that. But she became, sorry, Mr. Dunton knows my daughter. It's her confession. But she became an avid reader in middle school. She wasn't interested in reading before, and something clicked. She could read, but in middle school at ATMS, she just was like all over the moon about it. Super nerdy fact about me, students, and I want you to think about this when you go forward, not about me, but just about the fact. My favorite book in the whole wide world is the dictionary, because outside of names, everything that you read is inside the dictionary. It contains all the stories that you read. So it's kind of a cool way to look at it, that one book has all our stories. But that's just me. So I do have one question. What do you think that you will do with all that you've learned about reading? How far do you think that will take you? Is it for enjoyment? Is it for a career? Is it for learning? Is it lifelong?
I will always keep it with me, and in the future, if it will definitely hold importance, I will use those skills.
Fabulous.
I will definitely use it for my future career and for my own downtime because I love reading. It's relaxing, and it's just my happy place.
will use it for like entertainment. Like, it's like fun to read.
That's fantastic. So I, on behalf of the board, I thank you. I'm not giving you anything this time. It's Trustee Peterson. Trustee Peterson is your liaison, and he's coming over to say a thank you for taking time out of your evening. Sorry, adults. This is for the students, to say thank you for taking time out of your evening. Thank you, parents, and teachers, staff. Thank you very much.
It's called Pulse. And I just started reading. I can hardly wait to get home today. I'm really surprised you're reading a book about basketball.
You look like a basketball player.
So don't go too far. You have to stay for the photo.
Okay, we get to be in a picture here.
Yeah, come. Oh, everybody? You can go in the back, Ethan. Yes.
It's a group photo. It's a group effort.
There we go.
There you go.
I'm not the shortest.
Yeah, I know. Everybody tickles somebody so they smile here.
You all see me? Okay, there we go. Cheese. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You are welcome to stay. We like an audience, and we do lots of interesting work.
But we will
Honestly.
say thank you.
But we will say thank you. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Mr. Dunton. Thank you. And Mr. Singh, nice to see you. So while we transition now, would just like to bring us back to Superintendent Nozek. And he has some reports on achievement and results for us.
I do. Thank you, Chair Wilson. In fact, I'm going to invite Deputy Superintendent Ning to provide a couple of items for you tonight. The first will be a strategic progress report with respect to our secondary schools. And then there's been some questions around how are we doing, how are our schools doing with respect to the restrictions around the use of personal digital devices in schools. And so Deputy Superintendent Ning is going to speak to you about both of those items.
Great.
Over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Nozek. Evening, Board Chair Wilson, Secretary Treasurer Elstuck. Trustees, it's my pleasure to present to you the secondary progress report for the 23-24 school year. So I'll share some of the insights to the last year and a little forward looking into this year. I know that there has been an opportunity to see some of the data already in Ed Committee, and so some of the data you will have seen already. But just to start, we have a very fulsome secondary complement of 5 of our big schools, 2 middle secondaries, an alternate site, and then a provincial online learning school, AVS. And really it's about supporting leadership teams to build a world-class, innovative, and individualized educational experience for every secondary student. And so with that in mind and that vision, the focus under your strategic plan for the student success pillar, I'll talk to some of the work that's been happening in our secondary schools over the course of the 23-24 school year. So as we look back, and again, highlighting some of the work that's been happening in the area of student success and literacy, really the strategy of exploring some classroom practices to prepare students for the provincial literacy assessments, and we'll look at that data in a second, as a way to track improvements, and then specifically looking at some of the assessment measures through the report cards and tracking student final marks in their English courses. So again, when we look at what's available to us in that grade 10 area with the provincial literacy assessment and grade 10 final grades, you'll see over the course of 5 years from 2019-20 to 23-24, some trends there for all students, our Indigenous students and diverse learners. What we'll say is that the trends have been fairly flat over the course of the last 5 years, and I know that we've talked about that, and still discrepancies between some of our groups that we're paying attention to with respect to results, and that would mirror in our grade 10 final marks for English. And again, a similar trend where fairly flat. over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, with some differences between the various groups. When we look at the grade 12 provincial literacy assessment and grade 12 final grades, again for English, and that's C+ or higher, you'll see a measure. So in the top of that table, looking at the literacy assessment for grade 12, on the left-hand side will be the district average, and on the right-hand side will be the provincial average. You'll see that in many instances we are at or close to the average. There are some discrepancies to look at that will be cause for the level to dig into. When you look at that provincial literacy assessment, in the 23-24 school year, we don't yet have all of the data from the province, and so that's why you'll see no provincial data to compare our district data. But we were able to pull out some of our local results. But again, pattern, when you look at that assessment, again, a bit, I'll say if you look over the course of the 3 years, generally a flat trend as well over our time engaged in the literacy assessment. And grade 12 final grade, C+ or higher, a similar result when we look at all students, again, noting some of the differences. And that's a provincial trend as well, and something that the Ministry of Education and Childcare has noted as work for districts across the province. Yes, Ruby. Sure.
Thank you. So I just recently went to a staff meeting, and they do this thing that's called Book Creator. I'm guessing you're familiar with it, where if you don't know the language, you can learn the sounds and stuff. But they had some interesting stats about, you know, we're talking about student learning English literacy and in English, but they also check what they know in their own mother tongue to see, because we think that they don't know the information, but when they do it in their mother tongue, they actually have a lot of information. So I'm just curious, like, is there any benefit or value for us to know that data, like when it comes to what they actually know in English and compare it to what they know in their mother tongue?
When I think it comes down to assessing like overall knowledge, I think there's some value to know if it's a language instruction piece specific to English. And certainly we've noted that technology has come a long way, as we've talked about, and so our access to tools that might allow us to give accessibility to content. So depending on what we're trying to assess, does something get lost because of skills with the English language, and we're not actually measuring that? You know, I think there's probably some conversation there around that, and I know that some schools, depending on their context, are looking at that because of the diversity that exists in our school. So, you know, I think as technology improves and our understanding accessibility will allow us to perhaps look at some things in some different ways. Absolutely. Yeah.
Carry on. We'll save
Sure.
the rest of the questions for Fred.
Sure. Sorry, and again, in numeracy, similar to literacy, looking at strategies to prepare students for the provincial numeracy assessment, and again, similar tracking and reporting student final marks in their math courses. So again, you've seen this data again over the last 5 years when we track the provincial numeracy assessment in grade 10, noting that there have been some conversations provincially around this particular assessment because it's an assessment of numeracy. And so there's some instructional pieces, and I know we've been working through that with our secondary schools throughout many districts in the province, and so the results aren't as high as we would like, but you'll see some comparators there between our district and what the provincial average is. Again, generally speaking, fairly flat when we look at the results over time, and again, noting some trends of gaps that exist between different groups. And then when we use a measure of final marks in math of C+ or higher, again, you'll see we would generally want to see some better results here. And so that's something that will be continuing discussion with the secondary level and the work they're doing with curriculum to help support some improvement in these results. With respect to the objective around student well-being and improvements in this area, there continues to be ongoing work in the 23-24 school year. Our continued work in student voice. You've seen that through our district planning committee over the last few years, and in secondary schools, a focus effort on gathering students and bringing them into some conversations related to their well-being and some school culture pieces. As well, working with our LSS department around best practices in terms of social emotional learning strategies in the classroom, and that continues to be ongoing work. And then leadership that emphasizes the importance of creating and maintaining a classroom environment that's caring, inclusive, and supportive. So that's reflective of the teacher competencies we have developed here in the Abbotsford School District, and what we hear from students around what's important to them in terms of creating ideal learning environments in our secondary schools. One of the pieces that we have to help inform us in this area is through the student learning survey. So information that we get at 4, 7, 10, and 12. And when we looked at the results from the 23-24 year connected to the framework for enhancing student learning areas of being welcomed, feeling safe, and a sense of belonging, you'll see the results there and comparisons to provincial averages. And we are almost bang on in terms of provincial averages. Again, we would want to see some improved. Every school district, I would say, especially when you look at that third one around place that you feel like you belong. And then for us, we've broken out the Indigenous student piece and areas that we're working on in terms of that sense of belonging. Finally, the percentage of students who graduate with options and purpose, so that career development piece and the core competency piece, and some of the work that's happening in our secondary schools around tracking eligible grad cohorts, the connecting with our post-secondary partners, in this particular case UFV. So we've had some meetings over the course of the last couple of years, in particular creating connections between our math and science department, so bringing together teachers with staff from UFE to create more common connections in the work that we do, and supporting that transition and opportunity for students as they move to post-sec. And again, similarly, looking at our Indigenous grad cohort, tracking and supporting them to get them to successful graduation. Evidence of this will be last year with Yale, where they had 100% of their Indigenous students graduate, is the result of that work. And additionally, looking at spring break and summer camp for Indigenous grade 12 students. So work that our Indigenous Ed department has been really committed to, that is making a difference in terms of graduation rates. And then working with our communications department around planning for the careers and the options, and so actively trying to make sure there's access to information and the number of options that students have in our secondary schools. And again, just high level, looking at graduation data over the course of the last 5 years, 6-year grad rate, district average with a provincial average. When you look at the all students at a 92% rate in the district, slightly above the district average. You look at our 6-year for Indigenous, 84% compared to 76 in the province. And then for our diverse learners at 71 here in the school district compared to 78 provincially. And then when you look at that with eligible for grade 12 grad rate, so when we look at the students who start grade 12, who are eligible to graduate that year, those numbers, again in percent, demonstrate that at a high level, our students are doing well with respect to graduating and being successful in our secondary schools. So successes, supporting student agency through a community of practice approach. So we're about 3 years into this, and really working with our leaders and teachers and young people to give them opportunity to develop voice and agency in the work. Innovative and engaging programs in all of our secondary schools. So the IB program at Abbey Senior and the School of Business and Science at Hanson are a couple of examples of what is available to students in the school district. Communicating school progress with the school community through activities or evidence on school websites. So our work to engage parents in the community around the great work that's happening in our secondary schools. And then the connection with UFV, and again spoke to our concerted efforts to connect our system with their system with respect to our teachers and some of the faculty at UFE. Emerging area of needs, we continue to refine the process for school planning, so creating alignment between your strategic plan, the work of the level in terms of the operational plan, and how things are put to action through a school plan at a individual school level. Secondary reporting, some ongoing implementation and refinement, and we've had conversations as there's been many changes over the course of the last couple of years in this area. Addressing flat results, so we talked about some of the data and the nature of the trends and needing to look at this and focus on the literacy and numeracy assessments. Ongoing leadership recruitment and development as all levels continues to be an area that we need to work really hard at to make sure that we have the best leaders in our schools, and then the exploration of post-sec partnerships and career path opportunities. So again, our ongoing engagement with post-secondary. So when we look ahead at the 24-25 school year, future plans are continuing work with student voice and community of practice. We have a forum scheduled here in late April. And so we're undergoing the planning process to bring those young people together with teachers and leaders, a focus on a culture of reading, so that continued work with curriculum. Heard a little bit from ATS tonight about the work that they're doing around that culture of reading, and that will be a focus. Continuing our secondary assessment collaborative inquiry, so this is work again done with curriculum, and they've had a couple of meetings so far this year to really engage staff and leadership in this area of secondary assessment. And then one of the pieces I know that was noted, so while you looked at some of the student learning survey information, we want increased rates of participation. And so that's one of the things that we've been talking about with our leaders. And finally, post-secondary partnership opportunities. So there's ample opportunity out there with a number of different post-secondary and again, to look to what possibilities exist when we are in conversations with them. We've heard that from the young people. They want to know what opportunities exist for them once they're done grade 12. And so there's work that's happening and some conversations and meetings that are happening to amplify those partnerships. I want to talk a little bit about parent engagement, as it's one of the board's strategic priorities, and many common practices that are happening across secondary. So from newsletter opportunities to open house and meet the teacher events. We've been focused on school websites, social media pieces with our secondary schools, all schools. As we move towards the end of the year, the different events that are connected to grad, school performance events, our grade 8 parent night. So as we look to transition middle school students into secondary, some of those will happen. And then our ongoing collaborative work with PACs in our secondary schools. Some highlights would be the Indigenous Family Gathering that happened at Bakerview this year, the Elders Tea also at Bakerview, and then finally the Celebration of Learning that just happened at Hanson, which was a great event that many of you were at. That's a way to connect with our parent community about the work that's happening in our schools. Secondly, wanted to touch on again one of the board's strategic priorities in terms of extracurricular, and it's a significant component to the experience for a student in our secondary schools. And so worked to establish baseline data through participation in BC school sports. So it's that governing body that really helps us make things happen in terms of league play and so forth. And so continuing to work with them to establish what baseline looks like. District support for sport association fees and extracurricular transportation. So the board's support of creating accessibility for schools to offer these opportunities for students. And additionally, when teams make provincial championships, our support of them to make that feasible, because there are other costs associated when teams achieve at a high level. And then finally, looking to establish a baseline for secondary club participation. So extracurricular goes beyond sport, and so there's some work underway to look at what exists in our secondary schools, knowing that currently over 75 different clubs are offered at our secondary schools. Questions?
Thank you very much, Deputy Superintendent Ning. Really appreciate that update. We're going to pause in between this and the
Sure.
next report so that if anybody else has questions, feel free to ask away. Trustee Rye, and then I saw Trustee Peterson, and then Trustee White.
Quick question, can we go back to slide 15, which shows the 6-year graduation rate? I'm just curious. I'm supposed to be a numbers guy, but I didn't understand quite. So the bottom 3 rows,
Yes.
that is when student is going into grade 12.
So my understanding is it is the students that are eligible at grade 12. Like, so if we, had 200 kids eligible at Abbey Senior in September, how many of those made it to graduation in June?
So let's go to 2023.
Yeah.
So diverse learners, 96% was available, should have graduated. And
So
then
sorry, Trustee Wright, say that again, which year?
2023, the last year,
Yeah.
on the bottom, diverse learners, 96.
So 96% who were eligible graduated.
And then 71% actually graduated.
No.
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so maybe I'm a little confused there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, there's two different
it's
rates.
actually, it is interesting, because the ministry shares both pieces of data, and there's so many avenues in. So the top piece that you're looking at there is a 6-year trend within 6 years.
Right.
But students sometimes graduate after that, sometimes they graduate much less than that. And so what the bottom line is able to do is say, look, this September, we anticipate this many students should be able to graduate this year. You might be in year 7, you might be in year 4 going ahead, and of that cohort in September, then we get to 96. So I think about, for example, our diverse learners often take a year or 2 on top of what you might think of the grade 9 to 12, span of time. By design, maybe as part of an IEP. And so when we flag that 1 year where we expect them to graduate, you see the numbers go up.
Oh, okay. So what I'm understanding is that, let's go to all students, 2023, 24, 97% should graduate in the next, either grade 12 or 2 or 3 years after. Is that what it means?
We're seeing students who graduate sometimes after a 6-year mark.
Yeah, so like after grade 12, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. But in actuality, within those 6 years, the 4 years of 9, 10, 11, 12, and 2 years after, 92 have graduated.
And put another way, it might be that, this is sort of put crudely, but you might be in grade 11, and then the following year, it might be that you're sort of in grade 11 again, and we're not actually anticipating that you'll graduate.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So do we track after 6 years as well, or not really?
Some of them.
Yeah,
Some.
until they're adults.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Peterson, and then Trustee White.
Thank you for the presentation. I guess the bad news is that our results are flatlining, but, I see it the other way around. I actually see it as good news. There's many people who think that our students are not doing well in their classes. In fact, it's about the same as it has been for some time. And I think when we look at, I'm not going to blame COVID much longer, but I'm going to blame it at least tonight. And also, the complexities and the diversities of our classrooms. So I think we have to at some time stand back and say, these are good results. Now, the good news is the presentations that we've had over this last while are showing how they're looking to improve them, including the one we just had. So, I'm going to look at it as good news, and the fact that we have it as a big part of our strategic plan, and more presentations are addressing that. So, again, I think that's good news.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Pearson.
Thank you, Trustee White.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there's lots of good news in here. Still some concerning things, and I often will highlight the student well-being piece. As we see, there is almost 24% of kids saying they do not feel safe in schools. Could you give us any sort of perspective on why kids aren't feeling safe in school, or 24% of them, and what kind of initiatives are being tried to sort of combat those reasons?
Yeah, it could be a number of reasons. I don't know that I could point to any one, like this is the reason. Part of the work secondary schools are doing, I'll say with the student voice pieces, to actually dig into some of those pieces. So in some cases, students have identified that they want to look at creating a more welcoming culture as an example. So it might point to, the transition into secondary school might be a theme they pick up. Some of our big, if you think about secondary schools of, look at Mowat of 1,400 students, that can be a pretty daunting place, right? And so it could be around connecting with a peer group. It could be around instances where, when we think about the diversity, just not seeing themselves in their surroundings. It could be issues related to behavior challenges that are happening. It could be a range of things that are contributing to that sense of not feeling like they belong within a school setting.
Yeah, just to clarify, there was two. One was, is school a place you feel you belong? My question was specifically about, do you feel safe at schools? Do you think that there's an overlap between the two?
Potentially. It depends on the student and their perspective, right? I think some experiences can feel unsafe and they can make you feel like you don't belong, right? So I do think that you could capture both, and I think that's why we engage in some of the work we do to ask students, right? And part of our district planning committee has to look at some of the things that impact student well-being in schools, and I think some of the issues that we face in our secondary schools here in Abbotsford are not dissimilar to other secondary schools. So when we connect with our colleagues in other districts, sometimes we find there are lots of commonalities to some of the bigger system issues facing secondary students.
Thank you. I'm Trustee Kander Rajwan, I'm just going to get you to hold off for one moment. I'm going to go to the phone. Sorry, Trustee Rauch or Trustee Neufeld?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent, for that report. I'm really excited about the intentional focus on post-secondary partnerships and career path opportunities for students. We don't want to take it by chance that students will fall into some of these paths, but that we want to be intentional and give them as many opportunities while they're in our schools to connect with a post-secondary or a career path. So thank you for that focus.
Great. Thank you.
So thank you, Trustee Neufeld. Trustee Rauch?
Yeah, I wanted to just comment on how valuable I think it is that we're focusing a lot more these days on literacy and numeracy. So that's great. And in combination with the extracurricular focus that we have, I hope that's a good recipe to improve the numbers in the future. I recognize the struggle that we have between making school fun, but also pushing kids to be the best they can be. So I feel like we're pushing the needle a little bit more into academics with the recent kind of push here. So I'm thankful for that. The teachers are working hard with kids who are coming from all over and have lots of outside pressures, as we all know. I just have one question that sort of struck me in the data here. I see that for our Indigenous kids, numeracy and literacy numbers are trending downwards, and that's a big concern for us because we put lots of energy into this group of kids, and yet the grad rates are going up. So I'm just wondering if the superintendent, if you can comment on sort of those two trends.
Yeah, I would look at, so some of the measures you're seeing, the graduation assessments, literacy and numeracy, they're not perfect. They're one data point in time. When you look at the overall trends for our Indigenous students and you compare them between districts, our kids, Indigenous students, do exceptional. What we're identifying is we want the gap to decrease. That's the goal. But when we look at them and the results comparatively, we would know that there are things that are trending in the appropriate direction. We want to do better. Our enhancement agreement outlines some of our commitments and actions, and we are seeing some, I'll say, qualitative pieces that indicate that we're headed on the right track. There's some other pieces too. I'd mentioned the Yale example of 100% graduation. I just recently spoke to District Principal Allison Gardner today as we started our transition meetings. And when we look at the number of our Indigenous students in our secondary schools that might be at risk, I can tell you that very few, if any, at this point, and we've almost completed our transition meeting with secondary. So that's exceptional work, and that's due to the commitment of our leaders in our secondary school and their proactive work and the collaboration with our Indigenous Ed department. And so I think what we'll see over time is data tracking towards where we want to see in terms of a decrease in the gap.
Trustee Rauch, any?
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, I sure hope so. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Trustee Kendra-Rajwan?
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Thank you for the great presentation there, Assistant Superintendent Nathan Ning. A couple of questions and a comment. Sort of what my fellow trustee White here says about student well-being. I'm with you about, students feeling welcome and feeling safe, but at the same time, if you look at those stats on slide 13, the question is, do you feel respected by others that are different from you? It's higher. So I'm just so curious, like maybe the word safe doesn't mean the same thing to everybody, but respect, maybe it's more positive. I don't know, I just think that's interesting that from the district and provincial, they're both high.
Right.
And it's the same number, so something.
So what I would say, and that's why I said it mirrors almost the provincial average. So is it a question issue and how kids are interpreting? Hard to say. We do have, and I don't have it offhand, but we have YDI data, which is grade 11, which talks in a little bit more detail around some similar aspects. And so, again, we've been working with our secondary students around trying to understand what's behind a number, right? So when we get this number, to kind of get a perspective around what this means to them.
And I have two other questions. Looking at numeracy, I forgot what slide it's on here, but my question to you is, when it comes to math and students, some students are in math and some are in workplace math. Does that number affect your overall results on that stats if they're in math or workplace math?
For the grade 10 final,
Yeah, does it?
I'm assuming that that's inclusive of any grade 10 math, but I'd have to look into that for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regardless
Like, how
of
does
which
it work?
math course you take, you still take the numeracy assessment. And you do raise an interesting point, which I'd like to flag for people, which is the numeracy assessment is not necessarily aligned perfectly with, say, grade 10 math curriculum. This is designed to be foundational skills.
Okay.
And so it happens regardless of whether you take this stream of math or that stream of math.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, you talked about, I think it was like during spring, you got help for graduation?
Yes, that's spring break camp.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is
Yeah.
it specifically only for Indigenous students or for anybody?
So it started off, it is for our Indigenous students. It's
Right.
something that's sponsored by our Indigenous department. So we have staff that give up their spring break. They go around and they identify students who are at risk for not graduating, and they have them come in and they work with them over the course of spring break. And it's been very successful the last couple of years.
Is there any opportunity to have that option for other students as well, or?
We haven't looked at, it becomes a staffing issue. And so it is something that, again, our specific Indigenous department. Now, having said that, again, where I said that we have not identified any students at risk within our Indigenous population. So it speaks to some of the incredible work that's happening. There is another opportunity with summer school, right? And so that's another, and that avenue is certainly available to everyone.
Okay,
But the
thank you.
spring break camp is specific to Indigenous students.
Thank you.
So I just have a couple comments. One, seeing the, it's always a topic when we go to BC School Trustees Association about our Indigenous graduation rates, and that they are usually typically higher than the provincial rate, when we know that there are districts out there that are 46% or 44%. So we know there are some other high-performing districts, but we're part of what brings that average up. And they always ask, like, what are you doing right? And I say, have your superintendent call our superintendent. So it's always an interesting kind of conversation. But every district has their own sets of unique challenges, right? So fair enough. And I also wanted to say thank you for raising the profile about what's been going on in our schools from an extracurricular and engagement perspective, because we've had so much going on. I'm not sure that the public is completely aware of that. There's always room for more, and I know that there's some thought around that, but what we're doing is quite incredible and has been for a long time, and we have employees in our district who step up and take on these engagements and these extracurricular, and they are to be thanked for that. So just thank you for raising that ongoing work.
Yeah, thank you. There's no doubt in our secondary schools we have some of the most exceptional staff at all levels, from support staff to front office staff to teachers, specialist teachers, or district staff that really create an exceptional experience for our students here in the Abbotsford School District.
So thank you. May he just move on? Thank you. Next.
Next. Not a PowerPoint, but just speaking to
Somewhere.
somewhere in there. There we go. So this year was the first year that through direction from Ministry of Education Child Care to put in some restrictions around personal digital devices. We engaged in a fulsome consultation period end of last year, spring of last year, to gather some information from various groups around what this might look like moving forward in an admin procedure and such, reflected in our code of conduct and your policy. And we wanted to get some insight from our leaders in schools who are often faced with, I'll say, challenges with respect to digital devices in schools, to see how it was going. And so we had an opportunity to survey them and get some responses back. And so what I'll say at the outset, it's been overwhelmingly positive around the implementation and some of the pieces that schools are seeing. It's not without its challenges, without a doubt. But when we ask some questions around, do students understand what the restrictions are? So are we communicating clearly with them around some of the changes? Because schools would have had some things in place in terms of expectations, but this did, I'll say, give a little more teeth to what we were expecting from our students, in particular middle secondary. And so that's who was surveyed. But we had a 100% response rate from administrators. So I think there was 23 administrators who responded about students do understand always or often what the expectations or what the restrictions are. And then at about 86% responded that they comply, right? And that's pretty good when you're talking digital devices, young people, and the significance that they have for them in their daily lives. And so when we asked some further questions about what's working well, there were certain themes that came out. And so what was identified was high compliance and understanding, a positive impact on the learning environment, so that those restrictions really allowed us to focus on, if we were going to use it for educational purposes, and that was clear. Support from staff and parents. So the majority of staff and parents understand and support this particular, I'll say, AP and some of the restrictions in place. Improved classroom management. So definitely hear that from leaders are hearing that from teachers that they work with, and the appreciation of a clear and consistent policy procedure on this. So being straightforward with clear expectations district-wide was really helpful. And so that was noted in the responses. Where we continue to just have to work at it, what might be seen as some challenges. So any large system, the consistency of enforcement, and so working towards that. Again, we are 6 months into it. Some resistance, again, young people wouldn't be young people if they didn't push back a bit with some things. And so, again, just working our way to create higher levels of compliance. The impact of parental influence, right? So phones in particular can be a good connection for parents. And so hearing some things around students needing phones for those emergency contacts from parents. And so that's something to continue to work through. When we work with certain populations, restrictions on a phone can be anxiety producing. and so having to work through some of those challenges. And then just with the implementation of anything, ongoing monitoring of that policy was something noted. It is I'll say, additional work for an administrator, but they understand and appreciate the net result of having to reinforce and ensure that the policy is implemented. I'll just read some of the specific comments. Staff appreciate the district's direction. It's leading to fewer issues and conflicts over personal devices. The policy has improved staff morale by reducing the need for constant reminders. They talked about the addition of some devices as well as we go along. It says that the policy has been effective with no major frustrations or apparent pushback, and it provides clear procedures and flexibility for managing device use, including uses related to health, medical, or accessibility needs, right? So the appropriate use of devices dependent on a student's need, but understanding why the restrictions were there in the first place, right? To really support the learning environments in classrooms. So 6 months in, what I would say is the feedback we've had in the system from our leadership has been fairly positive with respect to restrictions to personal digital devices.
Thank you, Dr. Ning. Questions? Trustee Kendi-Raj, one.
Thank you for that, for the report. Just a question. I didn't see it on the stats there. Has the change in policy created any change in concerns when it comes to cyberbullying? And does staff see more or less concerns of social media bullying or other concerns related to that when it comes to phones?
I think they've noted less issues related to that. I wouldn't know specifically if they would say less. I would say overall probably a reduction, keeping in mind this is still only in the school environment, and that oftentimes that cyberbullying occurs 24 hours a day, and if you don't maintain some of those restrictions, some of that will still happen. So we still see instances of that, but we're just controlling what happens in the classroom environment.
I think more not getting as many concerns as you typically would.
I would say that's fair. Yeah.
Okay,
Or
thanks.
issues that come up in the classroom
Yeah.
with it.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else at the table? How about on the phone? Trustee Roque, Trustee Neufeld?
No, I just thank you for the report. I know it's still quite early in the process, and so to continue to echo check the system to make sure that we can work out the bugs as we go along. So thank you for that.
Okay. Trustee Roque?
I do have a question. I know I sound a bit like a broken record, but I'm curious to know if you've asked any of the middle schools in our district if anyone would like to step up to a challenge of doing a 1, 2, or 3 month complete cell phone cleanse, and then post the results on how that went as sort of a pilot project.
No, and I know that was brought up last time, Trustee Rauch, about whether or not a middle school would be. We've had, and I'll say that the offer hasn't been put out yet regarding doing that, and I'm happy to offer that up to a middle school to see if there's a school that would want to take that on. And so I'm happy to follow up that at a later date.
The board can talk about that and
Sure.
we'll get back to you. So I have a question for you. What I don't really see in here is about assemblies or pep rallies or things like that. How are those managed?
Yeah, so that's inclusive of, and again, in the themed comments, and then some of the particular, I'm just going to go back and look. Nothing was brought up as an issue, right? So I would say by the absence of that being identified, that schools are not grappling with issues in an assembly with a guest speaker, with students on their phone, or issues coming up. So that was not, again, we're early on, 6 months in, that has not been identified as something that still challenges schools.
All right, thank you so much for the report, Deputy Superintendent Ning. It's very, very enlightening, and it's always important to review where we started, where we've come.
Yes, great.
So thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, and we will now move to Superintendent Nozek's mid-year report.
Yes, thank you. Do I have a clicker?
Oh, sorry.
Sharing the clicker.
Thank you. And microphone. microphone. Well, thank you, trustees. What I thought I would do is do a little bit of a pan back. And so here we find ourselves, remarkably in some ways, almost at the middle of February. It puts us, you know, past the halfway mark of the school year. At this point, in case you don't know, you've had strategic updates from every department. You've had strategic updates, including tonight from the level groups. So I wanted to just take a few minutes, I know you've had a few presentations, to pan back and kind of synthesize all the work happening, or the key pieces that were happening with respect to your strategic plan. And so you know that we're on this awesome mission of a world-class, innovative, individualized educational experience for every student. You know that our data this year continues to trend up. You've seen the growth in complexity, designations, ELL. We're still more than 20,000 students, more than 3,000 employees, and closing in on 90 different languages. And yet, despite that diversity and complexity, some really wonderful things happening. You had a chance to share out to the public a measuring up report, and you've heard even as recent as tonight some of the successes and challenges with respect to the work at our secondary work. So I'm going to give you a quick flyover. We had a chance, I know, to spend a day together recently where we dove into some of the strategic plan. So here's what you identified as key priorities under the progressive workforce pillar. And I thought I would highlight some of the key things happening with respect to that. We started the school year off, I think starting with a positive tone is absolutely key. Many of our trustees were there for our leadership conference, Leadership Through Learning and Innovation. If you can see the font, read some of the feedback that we got from our managers, ops leaders, principals, and vice principals. So in terms of hitting a note that has people excited, challenged, and feeling like we're moving in the right direction, I think we're able to achieve that. You also know that last year we engaged in a very fulsome employee engagement survey. And there were some really good things we saw in that survey. Here's a few of them right there. I can be myself at work, I'm able to be creative, et cetera, et cetera. On the right side, though, you'll also note some challenges were identified. And so we have been attending to the engagement piece. And you'll know around the staffing and staff support side, the steps we've taken around our UTalks, our uncertified teachers teaching on call, expanding where we're at with respect to stepping into places like letters of permission. You know that when it comes to facilities and resources, we've got some targeted funds for capital projects. We have some wonderful, we're able to take you out to various sites to see some of the work we're doing when it comes to our actual buildings and capacity. Our new dispatch system, we've got some enhanced leadership programs and some important ways of engaging through workshops sponsored by our Human Resources Department. On that end, let's get a little bit into some nitty-gritty. From July to January, we're able to have 208 enrolling and non-enrolling teacher positions filled, 69 TTOCs, 30 uncertified teachers teaching on call because we shifted some of them to letters of permission, 124 internal support positions, 93 casual employees hired. Lots on the go with respect to some of the health and safety initiatives, which we've also identified as important for our employees. And building leadership capacity, we've refreshed a mentoring program and our leadership development programs. And of course, we're a learning organization, and so you know this is coming up this Friday, over 70 sessions, 900 participants, and we have a keynote speaker with Holly Clark, who will be speaking about AI in your child's education, so we're very excited about that. With respect to the engaging opportunities pillar, these were the priorities that you had identified. And some of the things happening therein. So you know, and you've heard me say this before, and our senior communications managers in the room, I know, we have really invested some key time in our strategy with respect to driving engagement online, and so you can see an increase September to September of 72% that are able to come to our district website. That's profound, that's key, and we've done this through trying to move our audience by telling powerful and compelling stories like this one. Should I? Yeah, I think we're good. You've seen that video, and I wanted to mention that video was picked up. You can see that bottom number with a reach of over 10.6 million. But one of the cool things was in a diverse community, 37 different media mentions in many different languages, and so that's exactly what we're looking to do in this community. We leverage digital tools like Seesaw with very great traction, both in terms of the student use and the family use, and a window into the work that's happening. And the in-person connections, we've had some very successful conversations, many of you were there, engaging with our students and with our educators, with DPAC, et cetera, on important topics. We talked about AI, we're going to be talking about careers, and we talked about the anti-racism action plan. And you've noted, I hope, that we've spent some time sharing more specific details around the kinds of offerings that we do when it comes to extracurricular opportunities for our students, and they've been embedded into the various strategic updates. We have a very major hardware refresh coming up next year, and so we're excited to incorporate that. And you've heard me and some of our team share with you the important work we do when it comes to digital literacy, and now living, working, and educating in a world where artificial intelligence is more ubiquitous than ever. It's everywhere, and so making sure that we're ahead of this. How do we use it safely? How can students use it? How should staff use it? And developed our own guidelines and some resources. Speaking of resources, under our optimized resources pillar, these were the priorities that you've identified, and so I'll do a quick flyover again. You can see some absolutely wonderful projects that are beginning to come to fruition. We had some literally field trips where we were able to show you the work in progress at Augustin and Stenerson, and of course stood on the grounds where we'll see the expansion happen at Abbey Middle School. And I referenced earlier that we have transitioned to our new enterprise resource planning system, no small endeavor. And much thanks to our Secretary Treasurer and his team, as well as the Human Resources team for that implementation. Making sure that we're able to leverage the right kinds of resources, including the Classroom Enhancement Fund, to support the teachers in our schools and make sure that we're able to support our students. And then the student success pillar. Usually I open with this, but I thought I would do a build-up. And so you've prioritized these pieces. You've heard the reports. I can do this high level, and I heard, I think Trustee Rauch already mentioned this, but yes, a focus on literacy and numeracy. The fundamentals are absolutely getting some key attention, and we're seeing some really good work happening. Making sure that we're attending to our youngest learners, whether that's with respect to like learning interventions and literacy and welcoming families, or more specifically on childcare, which is now a piece, as you know, that's under our mandate. And you can see the growth in some of the childcare spaces. I invite you, for example, to look at the bottom school age numbers, now at 879 spaces. And you get a sense of the growth there. You will get an update at a future ed committee on early learning and childcare as well. And well-being, you had some examples tonight. And there's so many things that our schools are doing. Formally, the roots of empathy. You've seen examples of the intergenerational learning, bringing in parents, grandparents, incorporating them into the learning, safe, welcoming spaces. All with the endpoint of graduating our students with a sense of dignity and purpose and direction. And as Deputy Ning just shared with you, we have excellent graduation rates, but we are still looking to close the gaps. While we have one of the strongest graduation rates even with our Indigenous learners, there's more room to improve, and that's also true with our diverse learners. You know as well as I do that we have some pretty fantastic students, and there's an example of a recent celebration of learning event where a student sharing his capstone project, and you get a chance to see the good work that we do in action. And of course, as I kind of build to an end here, undergirding all of this is the work that we do investing in culture. Culture underlies everything that we can do. This is not a technical enterprise. This is not about issuing literacy books for everyone and saying, go do it. You create culture. One of the things I pride myself on doing is getting out and checking in and having the visits. And yep, that sometimes means you throw on whatever shirt or jersey might be that day and make the rounds. And we've got great people, I can tell you, doing great things. We aspire toward a culture of thriving, even in times where we've got some labor challenges. And you know me, I like to lean on this all the time. Education is a bridge to anywhere. This is the important, great work that we get to do. So I hope you appreciate that flyover sense of the good work happening with respect to your strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. And I'm actually going to start with the phone this time. Trustee Rauch or Trustee Neufeld?
No, thank you very much for the report.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Neufeld. Trustee Rauch?
Yeah, I'll just say thanks for the report, Superintendent Nosek. I really appreciate all the efforts here, and I think we're heading in the right direction. So thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Table? Trustee Kandarajwan?
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Thank you for the presentation, Superintendent Nozick. And as you know, I'm a huge advocate when it comes to language, inclusiveness, and extracurricular activities. So, and I love stats, so I really appreciate this presentation. But what was more important is that you've been here for a year and a half, and it's one thing to have a presentation, but it doesn't matter where I go, like the dinner that we had for the long-term service dinner, anywhere I go, everyone's talking about the superintendent, the senior staff, and the shift that's happening, the culture that's happening. So I just want to say kudos to your team. It's one thing to have stats, but it's great hearing it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Because I have one question, and I'm not sure if it's a typo or if it's supposed to be this way, but it's on slide 12, under recruitment and retention. You
okay.
could see that I had it up.
Yep.
Are those right dates?
That should, no, they're not.
Yeah. I was like, that would be
Yeah.
last year's date.
Yeah,
right?
that should be January 2025. You're right, we just flipped over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you for catching that.
It's that detail thing I do.
You know, it's funny, I even looked at it, I'm like, oh yeah, 2024. Yeah, no, it's 2025 now, thank you.
Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know what slide 12 is under recruitment and retention, it's from July 1st, 2024 to January 31st, 2025. It's the number of enrolling, non-enrolling teacher positions filled, TTOCs hired, UTALKs, et cetera. So that's what slide 12 is. It's just the date was a year ago for anybody that's watching,
catch.
following along.
Good catch, thank you.
Okay, so seeing nothing further, we will now move to the next item, which has been added for the board's edification. It's, where did I go? I lost myself in here. I am not synced, that's why, but it is from BCSTA. It's an infographic. It's under the superintendent's report, but it is more actually about roles and responsibilities for us. Anybody have any questions? Would the superintendent or the secretary treasurer like to comment on this? Nope.
I'll just say, I hope the board sees as we work through the budget process this year that our specific processes in our strategic planning cycle, how they overlay with this. So I hope you see while this is a pretty high level view of what our plan looks like, our plan has a lot of detail, and I hope you just can see the similarities between the two.
Thank you. I really like the clarity of what's been put forward for us. Every board is slightly different, but all of us have the intention of improving student outcomes. That's pretty universal. So thank you for including this. So that concludes the report on achievement and results. I would now like to go to the nitty-gritty stuff. Secretary Treasurer Velistock, amended annual budget bylaw.
So this is the annual amended budget bylaw, requires 3 readings. We'll ask for you to also approve having all 3 of those readings conducted at this one meeting, in conjunction with, or as outlined in section 113 of the School Act. When the operating grant is revised by the ministry, the minister may require boards to amend their budget, and in this case, we go through that process of amending our annual budget. I maybe just touch on a couple of things. Obviously, this amended budget gets adjusted for our change in student enrollment that happened on September 30th, and that affects our operating grant, so you'll see about a $2 million increase in total revenues. And we also see a corresponding increase on the expenditure side, and I just wanted to highlight one area of expense that's growing. It's about $2 million increase this year is our substitute employee costs. It's an area that obviously is not something that's funded by the province, so just something for us to watch. I think it will be a budget pressure as we begin our 25-26 budget work this coming year. So it is there for your approval.
Okay, so we need, Trustee Rai, you're moving all 3 readings in one sitting?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Trustee Kandaraj, 1. Thank you. Who would like to move first reading?
Peterson.
Trustee Peterson, Trustee White. Voting buttons. There we go. I think Trustee Neufeld and Trustee Rauch said they'd like to move second reading. I'm sure they did. That's what I heard. Sticking with-
Heard it clearly.
Hey, clearly, I thought so. I wasn't the only one. Okay,
Which
all right.
order was that?
Yeah, okay.
Neufeld White or White Neufeld?
It was
Or
Neufeld
Neufeld
Road.
Roque, okay.
Yeah, sorry. That would be coming up. This is your second reading that was moved by Trustees Rauch and Neufeld, or vice versa. Okay, and now we move to the big one. So who would like to move? You have to read it. Please go ahead. No, we're waiting for Mike. I wasn't
Trustee
looking at that.
Rauch.
Trustee Rauch? Ah, there we go. Okay. Okay, Trustee Kandaraj, 1.
The recommendation that the school should number 34 Abbotsford amended annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2024-2025, specifying an expenditure of $294,601,061 be given the third reading, reconsidered, and finally passed and adopted on this 11th day of February 2025.
This is where, that was seconded by Trustee Rai. And so anybody have any big questions? They want to vote against this? Hearing none, go ahead and vote, please. It's always, some boards do that. They actually don't do their third reading in all in one sitting. So it's always a bit of a joke. Trustee Rauch, we're just waiting for you. He was reconsidering. There we go. All right, so you're up again.
So before you is a property disposition bylaw, statutory right-of-way for services from TELUS and BC Hydro at our facilities yard. And again, the same drill here, 3 readings of the bylaw to be conducted at one meeting.
Trustee Rai, seconded by Trustee Peterson. I'll get you next. Okay. Trustee Neufeld, you're moving first reading, is that what I heard?
Correct, thank you.
Thank you. Seconder, Trustee White. Sometimes it's who I see first, not who I hear first. Moving second reading. Trustee Kandaraj, 1. Trustee Peterson, that will be up in a moment. I remember the first time I did one of these, I thought we were going to be like a long time. And I was like, oh, no, that's not how that works.
Move the third reading.
So go ahead, Trustee Rai.
Yeah, it's just coming up.
Yeah.
Just waiting. that School District number 34 Abbotsford Property Disposition Bylaw number 88 be given third reading, reconsidered, and finally passed and adopted on this 11th day of February 2025.
Fabulous. Voting buttons are coming up.
Second?
Oh, seconded
Peterson.
with trustee Peterson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one?
I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Oh, I was looking at this the wrong way. Okay. All right. There we go. We now move on to trustee announcements, which I really love the fact that we list all of our events for the public's edification. Sometimes it's not obvious where we've been or what we do. I open it up to, I know trustee Peterson had something. Go ahead.
Yes, I represent the board on the Community Culture Environment Committee at the city. And I was presented for the second time the official city plan. I thank them very much for making that presentation to the board. I thank them on our behalf, and to kind of listen to our perspective on it as opposed to different perspectives that people might have. And then they presented also their plan for art within the district, and it was a very good presentation as well. So I'm pleased to be able to be part of that committee and share what they do.
Thank you. We should add that to the list, I guess. Not really on there, but thank you.
And I might also say that I had the privilege of being at Clearbrook Elementary for their winter carnival, and I was served. What did they give me? They gave me a bun, a scone, and yes, a scone and something to drink, and I heard a lot of French there, of course, because they're, and I even responded in French a few times without much laughter, but it was a great event, and they do a good job there.
Great. Fabulous. Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee Cantaraj, one.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. I just want to say, once again, the long-term service dinner, I always look forward to it. It's such a great evening to see our staff every year. They're so excited to be there and bring their +1 that's been supporting them throughout 3 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I am going to comment on the long-term service awards dinner. This is so long in our district, nobody remembers how long we've had it. I'm sure somebody somewhere does, but it's been more than 20 years, and it is something that other districts went, you do what? How do you do that? Why do you do that? Because it's a long-term service dinner +1, and we do it starting at 20 years. Some districts don't do it until 25 or 30 years, and they do it as a T. The recognition is different district to district. But my understanding from other districts is that we were the first one to recognize and thank and appreciate our long-term employees. And I cannot stress enough how much that means to us because of what they do with that North Star, student success. And that's what we're all about. And I have to say that it is something that I've always been incredibly proud of, and I thank whoever the boards were before us that did that. So just wanted to include that. I actually meant to mention it at the beginning of the meeting as something. What I want to do is start talking about all the things that we don't see in our district, what the employees are doing, how they're doing it, where they're going with things, celebrate the things just in the beginning in the announcements that are outside of what the trustees are doing. This is what employees in our district are doing with the North Star in mind. So you can look forward to more of that. And now I move to the part of the meeting where I ask any of our gallery, the 3 of you, if you have any, thank you for waking up. Mr. Carlton. I invite you to come to the microphone, your name and who you're affiliated with. Anyone? You'll wait until.
I'll wait for another opportunity. I think there's multiple questions, but not for here.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
You're welcome. And that was AGU President just acknowledging that because you weren't to the mic, so thank you.
Chair Wilson?
Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff for the work that they do to remotely hook me up so I'm able to participate in both the in-camera and public meetings. Thank you, Beth, for that. And, yeah, and today would have been my mom's 97th birthday.
Aw, yeah. Hey, happy birthday to the heart.
Yep.
Okay, with that, I call adjournment. Remember, trustees, to stick around on the phone. Stick around, please, so that we can have a debrief with our superintendent and secretary